What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to take you guys through the top 1000 template team for the upcoming Game Week 19. So a lot of time between Game Week 18 and Game Week 19's deadline, kind of an unusual amount of time over these past couple game weeks when the game weeks have been so thick and fast, and from Game Week 19 onwards, that kind of returns up until that mid-January period. So I decided to create this top 1000 template to give ourselves a little bit of a viewpoint, and also because I think it's going to be a really interesting week to kind of look back and see what these managers actually did after the massive postponements that happened in Game Week 18. So there's kind of two reasons why I wanted to look at this template. The first one is going to be to see what actually these managers did with all these postponements. Did they take a massive amount of hits? Did they take players out that aren't playing, bring about 4 or 5 players that are? What the current scenario is with that template. And the second reason, I want to kind of see if the top 1000 has been completely displaced by managers that simply had more players for these blank game weeks that we've just had. Also wanted to clarify something, because on last week's top 1000 template, some people were asking me, but now that this video is kind of irrelevant because the news that has come up with these postponements. But guys, the template does not change no matter the news. Just because a game's postponed doesn't mean the ownership of one of these players goes up or down. The top 1000 template is taken from Fantasy Football Fix at the deadline of the preceding game week. So after Game Week 18, this is going to be the template that happened at that stage. So this allows us to kind of take the template for what it is, no news updates, anything like that, no live ownerships, and I think that's how we want it, to be honest. So don't worry if Game Week 19 gets cancelled, only has 2 fixtures, the template won't change, and you guys can use the information in this video no matter what the news does come about. So if that's something you guys are interested in, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into the template. So on screen now, you guys will be seeing the top 1000 template for the upcoming Game Week 19. What I will be doing next is I'll be kind of predicting the team selection depending on what fixtures are for which players. And then finally, I'll be bringing you guys my transfer predictions for the upcoming game week that these managers could potentially do. So I'm going to start off with the bench there. As usual, Sanchez, just a kind of cheap goalkeeper at 13.8%. I don't really know if this reflects the top 1000 template that well. I just think a Sanchez maybe was affordable, and that's why the algorithm decided to put him in here, as he might be rotated with Ramsdale when Arsenal's fixtures do get a little bit tougher. But going on to the rest of the bench, really strong bench here. I think this is a reflection of how split the template might actually be, but it also could be a reflection of these managers actually getting a strong bench for the amount of postponements that have been over these past couple game weeks. Josh King, Emil Smith-Rowe, and Livramento all on the bench there, a full playing bench for the top 1000 template. So if this template's going to be what everyone has, they won't be affected by future postponements that much because the bench looks super strong. I decided to put Smith-Rowe on the bench here. I'll talk about him a little bit later on, but I do think Smith-Rowe has found himself on the bench for the last couple of game weeks, and I think that might continue under Arteta for at least the next few. But what you guys will notice from our bench going to our starting 11 is that the top 1000 template have both Josh King and Dennis in that forward department. Now, no, this doesn't really mean that both of these two are in everyone's team. I think the ownership is just quite split because you either went for Dennis or you went for Josh King at that price point. And to be honest, guys, the forward department looks absolutely scattered. There's no good options to kind of go for, and that's why Ollie Watkins still finds himself at 60.7% ownership. I'm going to talk about him a little bit later on, but first, let's get on to the defense, or the template defense of the top 1000 template. This has not changed for at least a few couple game weeks. Ramsdale on goal, ownership has only skyrocketed just below that 83% mark, and this is what I was telling you guys in the last video. You have to almost have an Arsenal defender to kind of cover those clean sheet points. If you guys don't think that Arsenal will keep a clean sheet, that's another story, but if you do, I think that coverage is super essential at this stage of the season. The rest of the defense though, in the template defense, Cancelo, Trent, a relatively good week for those of you owners who captain Cancelo or just own basically Cancelo, Trent. Alonso James added to that this week, finally getting a clean sheet or double clean sheet if you guys did also have that Chelsea double up in defense. But what's surprising for me is that Reece James' ownership was up since the last template video. Don't really know why. I don't think James has been performing that well over these last couple game weeks. Chelsea as a whole haven't been performing that well. But just below that 87% mark is relatively high for James after not really performing that well. And as I said, Chelsea as a whole haven't been playing that well. Alonso though comes in and contributes 45.2%, relatively high ownership there. Spoke about James already, the reasons, and I do think with these hard upcoming fixtures from Chelsea's point of view, the top 1000 template might kind of adjust and ship Alonso and Reece James out. Going on to the midfield department here, we have the red side and the light blue side. Mo Salah and Jota contributing to about 190% of the top 1000 template. Salah had his first blank in a couple of game weeks against the Spurs. Only 2 points, double to 4 if you guys did captain him, whereas Jota managed to head a goal, and then I think he finished on about 7 points. So both these two options still looking pretty strong. Roberto Firmino, don't you know where the kind of fitness is on his point of view? I know that he did come off the bench against Spurs, so I think a start is going to come up in the future. It might just depend if Klopp benches Salah or Mane instead of Jota. But in the super popular Man City assets, Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden, I doubt the top 1000 template have doubled up. I think it's just kind of split ownership because you either own Bernardo or you own Phil Foden. Phil Foden coming in here as the more popular option at 59.4% compared to Bernardo's just above that 50% mark. Bernardo hasn't really been performing that well. He's kind of regressed. If you guys are kind of XG and look at the stats, you would have noticed that a regression is probably upcoming due to him overperforming his stats. But I know football is played on grass, so I mean, he could bang in these next couple game weeks. Whereas for Foden, the stats look quite strong, but the discipline is not there at the current moment. Pep Guardiola actually benching Phil Foden and Grealish after going out on the town and coming back, maybe a little bit worse for wear to the training session after that Leeds win. So Phil Foden, don't you know the story with him? But we'll touch on him a little bit later on in the team selection. But now the big talking point of this team selection or this top 1000 template, it's going to be Ollie Watkins with a massive 60.7% of ownership. Now don't you know what happened here with the top 1000? Maybe they were caught with an early transfer and maybe they wouldn't wait till that Saturday afternoon where the game was actually called off, and that might explain this high ownership that Ollie Watkins does have. I do think they'll look to ship him out if they don't want to hold on to him, but with the strong bench coming up, I do think the template could actually just bench Ollie Watkins for this Chelsea fixture coming up next. And then finally, Dennis, I've added him instead of Josh King because his ownership is significantly higher at just below that 50% mark. And this does actually really worry me as a non-Watford attacker owner. I don't own Dennis, I don't own Josh King, and if 50% or more of the top 1000 do, I might have to bring one of these assets in because Watford have some nice fixtures coming up potentially. So overall, the top 1000 template is looking quite strong. I think it heavily depends on the Man City performances and if Phil Foden can get back into that squad and Jota holds his selection over a Roberto Firmino. But now going over my team selection, this was quite a tough one because of how many good assets we do have in this 15 of the top 1000 template. But what I decided to do was I benched Ollie Watkins against Chelsea. A little bit self-explanatory there because the top 1000 template does have 2 Chelsea defenders, and I do think you guys have to kind of favor the Chelsea defense over the Aston Villa attack this week. I benched Sanchez against Brentford because I think Norwich is an easier fixture for Ramsdale. Smith Rowe's also on my bench just because I don't think he'll start against Norwich on the weekend. I just think that he's going to come off the bench and he could potentially score, but you kind of got to play the odds there, and if he's not going to start, you might consider him getting a bench. And then finally, Livramento against West Ham. Maybe Southampton can keep a clean sheet, but you just got to hope that maybe Antonio returns here. Antonio's ownership, though, in the top 1000 template is relatively low, and I think that's just a reflection of how bad he's been over these past couple game weeks. Maybe Livramento can keep a clean sheet, but I think you got to play the odds here and put him on the bench. So quite strong fixtures for the template defense. This is exactly what I was talking about with the Ramsdale ownership. If you guys don't own an Arsenal defender, you got to kind of hope the Norwich score here because his ownership at that 84% mark is absolutely massive, and I think Arsenal have a great chance of keeping a clean sheet in game week 19. Leicester for Cancelo, I do favour this more from an attacking than a defensive point of view for Man City just because Leicester have been attacking relatively well but defending quite poorly. So I think Cancelo maybe can get an attacking threat here, but the Man City defence has been rock solid, and therefore I think that he could potentially also get some defensive returns. Trent, I think, definitely has the best fixture from a defensive point of view. I know Liverpool usually leads to quite a lot of goals, no pun intended there, but I still think that Trent has the potential to get some attacking returns and some bonus points like he did against Spurs. Villa up next for Chelsea, which I think will be quite tough because Stevie G seems to have found a rhythm with that Aston Villa side, but I mean, you just got to hope that maybe Alonso and James can get another double clean sheet. The midfield, I think I'm super happy with, just depending on Phil Foden's situation. If he gets benched, relatively annoying there, but I think Smith Rowe could easily kind of deputise from off the bench. Leeds for Salah and Jota, great fixture on paper. I think there'll be a couple goals there as Liverpool look to bounce back from that draw against Spurs. Bernardo Silva, Foden against Leicester. Spoke with Cancelo, I think that's a better attacking fixture, and hopefully these two assets do get you some returns. But talking about double ups, the Watford double up front against Wolves, not great fixture on paper there. I think you guys just have to kind of hope that Watford sneak a goal or something like that because the Wolves defense has been quite solid over these past couple of game weeks. But I mean, Dennis and Josh King could maybe get something, maybe a penalty or something, but Dennis's scoring form is great, so maybe that'll overcome that good Wolves defense. But overall, don't you think it's a sensational week for the top 1000 template? I think there's going to be quite a low scoring week, to be honest, unless maybe Mo Salah, Jota can score a couple of goals against Leeds. But I think that Arsenal clean sheet could come back to bite those of you guys who don't own an Arsenal defender potentially. And now finally going over the transfers, or at least what I predict the top 1000 to do. I think the top 1000 will be quite a tryout in this case. I think I probably will be banking a transfer in preparation for these upcoming doubles. If you guys didn't watch my double game week 21 and 22 video, go check that out. I'll probably put the link in the description below. Great video there. I think I covered a lot of information. So I think the top 1000 template will be preparing for that, or what they could do, depending on what Pep says in the press conference coming up later this week. If Foden's going to be missing another game week, I think there could be some other rotation for him, maybe to a Heung-min Son if they can afford it, but otherwise maybe to a player that has a better fixture in game week 19. But let's go up the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like if you did, and subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. Also comment down below how many of the top 1000 template you guys own. Always like to see how template your guys' teams are actually becoming, and that might be a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.